Welcome to part 2 of our lecture on 1940s fashion. So we left off talking about the utilitarian aspect of rationing and how clothing was because of all the um, restrictions due to World War II. So now we're going to talk about kind of review main designers as well as look at menswear and kidswear. So, reminder, Paris was cut off from America during the war and most of the world. It's no longer the fashion capital during this um, World War II. So, as a result, fashion press really did work on giving publicity and giving attention, notice to the American designers that really were a big factor. They were really influential. And what happened was, it was believed this was going to be temporary, but it turns out this had influence all over the world, and it lasted even after the war. So these are just some of the main ones: Norman Norell, Charles James, Claire McGardell. We've already mentioned quite a few. Hattie Carnegie, Pauline Tregear. Norman Norell used unrationed sequins. These are his sequin dresses. That's what he was known for, and bringing kind of high fashion. Again, the father of high fashion for America. And he was a little defiant. He didn't care that it was wartime. He wanted glamour and he wanted high quality. And he wasn't a fond of the rationing, so he used unrationed sequins. He made a big point. I think that's why he started using these. He's like, they were restricted. He's like, restrictions be damned. I'll just go ahead and use them. But a lot of glamour. And Claire McGardell gave that, again, that typical, more casual, more practical, kind of all-American look. Now, what happened was, right after the war, basically, styles were still exactly the same. It's like it froze from the last year of the 1930s to going into the mid and going into the later 40s. It was frozen in no style involvement. So for 6 years, imagine the same style over and over and over and over. Nothing changed. So that's what I mean by it was frozen. No change at all. Now what happened was something really happened dramatically at the end of the 40s, and that was a dramatic shift in the silhouette, and the styles followed suit, and this was courtesy of Christian Dior for the spring 1947 collection. And what happened was he created this new silhouette called the New Look. So from what you've seen, I've shown you picture after picture of the same silhouette, the broad shoulders, small waist, and small hips, to the drop sloping shoulder, really tiny waist, very constrictive corset top basically, and the wide hip, the wide skirt. So that's called the New Look. So look at the difference. This was revolutionary. Not everybody liked it at first. Some people really liked it, some people didn't. But the shoulder line is rounded. The waistline is nipped in even more. I mean, they had small waists, but this was really nipped in. It emphasized the small waist. And the hemline is longer and wider, much wider in the hip compared to early 40s. So look at the difference. Now, corseted waist. So it's going back to the corset, which they didn't want. So, some people were really upset about that. A more unstructured, soft shoulder line sloping down, which they were used to seeing all this structure and this really sharply defined shoulder, padded hips, prominent rounded bust, so a larger chest, longer hemlines, and lovely details, very feminine details like buttons and drapes. And before it was a little bit more masculine, so more feminine. And it would be accompanied with gloves and some nice heels. But again, longer hemline, because you can use now more fabric, the nipped waist, but corseted. And I think that was the biggest thing some people had an issue with, was the corseted waist, because they didn't really want to go to that. Skirts were very full, up to 25 yards of fabric, or they were tightly fitted, or they would be really a lot of gathers, a lot of pleating, so you could use a lot of fabric. So not everybody was happy with the New Look, but it was revolutionary, and again, by Christian Dior, mainly because of the corseted. They didn't want to go back to that corseted look, and as you'll see when we look at the undergarments, a lot of Merry Widows, because they wanted to get that small waist and that larger bust. So menswear, this is a Zoot Suit, so that's why I put Zoot Suit Riot. Couldn't get the song on here, but I was going to try to get it to play. But this was a Zoot Suit that, again, trickle up fashion, came from the streets, from young men. Really baggy, you know, before it was a structured suit and it was going into more casual. So really baggy jacket, an oversized bow tie, you have your hat, baggy trousers, you had your chain, and matching colors. There's some contrasting colors, and you can have fun with polka dots and things like that. So not a tailored look. It was much baggier. See, this is what it came with. And designers copied this. So it's so funny. It started from the streets and designers copied this, but it was from the hand-me-downs. They would get a jacket from a larger guy, and it was baggy, so they kind of turned it into this whole look. So it became kind of this movement, and then designers copied it. So that's trickle up fashion. As you can see, we still have kind of that uniform look. You can see it. Everyone's dressed very similar during and right after the wartime. So menswear inspired women as well, as you can see from the pants. And instead of that tailored look, they're like, wait, what is this? What am I looking at? So yeah, it was weird at first, but it became a really, you know, a trickle up trend. And to this day, we know what a zoot suit is. So it's interesting. And it comes here and go. It comes back inside in fashion once in a while. Hollywood glam, which started in the 30s, is still prevailing, definitely. People are looking to starlets, to actresses, for the glamour, for hairstyles, for makeup, and for clothing trends. This is what we call old Hollywood glamour. Also, the Prince of Wales, he's still very influential. Yeah, I couldn't get the movie to work. For men, he was very influential in the 30s and still was in the 40s on men's styles, and he was really big on the +4s, like the golf pants and the Oxford pants. So very influential for menswear. So he continues his influence in the 40s. The overall trend, which I mentioned before, is going more casual. So instead of tailored suits, more sports jackets. Again, we did have the formal evolution of the tuxedo or dinner jacket, but still overall menswear is going more casual. It still has the same elements, you know, your jacket, your vest, and your trousers, but very subtle differences. The main kind of suit that was prevalent in this time was English drape suit, which is what you see right here. That's the English drape suit, so you need to know that. And that came in from the late 30s going into the 40s. So that's the main suit. But other than that, everything's going into a more casual arena, and the differences were very subtle. But the main trend is more casual. You do see more clothes for active wear and leisure activities, in particular after the war. So the tap trousers with like a polo, a vest. So not, you know, you have a more casual look here. In terms of outer garments, polo coats and trench coats, pretty much any jacket made out of wool. That was the main material for these jackets, these coats. Double-breasted was pretty common. You would wear your hat, your fedora, your hat, you had your Oxford shoes, and you had your trousers, and sometimes a walking cane. Hair was considered typically clean cut, so short, and fedoras were really common, but derbies and boaters, straw boaters were common for hats as well. Straw boaters, derby, and fedoras. Okay, so these are the main styles you need to know. But clean shaven and short hair was typical. And the Oxford shoes, the saddle shoes, these were the most important. Wingtip shoes, these were the most popular shoes for men. And accessories, bow ties, neckties, handkerchiefs, cufflinks if you were wealthy, watches, and tie clips, again, if you were wealthy. In terms of underwear, you did have a couple more options. So you now had the boxer short, which you didn't have an option before. You had jockey shorts and the athletic shirts. So those were the undergarments for men. And lastly, children. So just like before, we've had a children's clothing reflecting the same styles like they were for their adult counterparts. So we still don't have children's wear, where it's just like a market specifically designing for children and their needs. Um, Little boys were dressing like their dads or men. Young boys did wear, excuse me, you did wear knickers. Older boys wore suits. Typically, that pretty much looked a smaller version of what their dads wore. But little boys did wear knickers, and little girls would wear representative of what the women were wearing, but they kept they actually were a little different. Unlike boys, where they really did wear what the men were wearing, the girls they mimicked the 40s a little bit, or 30s and early 40s, but as you can see, it kind of stuck for a while. So what they did is they puffed the skirt a little bit, gave it a wider skirt, and that's what they kept. So they did this trapeze or tent-like shape for toddler girls, but then once they got the slightly more structured dress, that's what little girls would wear up until they were, you know, um, teenagers. So very, structured, and it had a very similar look. So a full skirt. So even though in the 30s it was a narrow skirt, and going into the 40s, narrow skirt, um, they ended up having a fuller skirt and kind of puff sleeves, little sailor collars with a cute little hat, and their little purse, and they would wear sometimes gloves and the little lace socks with Mary Janes that were really popular. Um, and saddle shoes that you keep attributing those to the 50s, but those started in the 40s. All right, thanks for listening.